Hi guys, sorry about that. I'm not sure what happened to my system, but am I audible now?
Yes, Vinay. Hi, good afternoon. I
Morning,
don't know,
everyone.
there was some network error, but good that that's resolved right now. Perfect. I think we can start the webinar. So thank you, Vinay, and thank you everyone for joining us this evening. For this webinar. So we'll dive deep into Log9 and a little bit into the green energy sector. Vinay, could we just start by if you could give a brief intro about yourself? There is one I have presented here, but if you could just start off by giving a brief introduction about yourself and what your role as head of finance is at Log9.
Sure. So I'm a chartered accountant. Finished my CA in 2010. Started my career with Deloitte as part of the accounting advisory practice. It was when US GAAP and IFRS was making its inroads into India. I was part of that team that would uh, make these accounting standards well suited for Indian GAAP, at the same time help the audit teams also convert their local GAAP into international reporting. So that was pretty much the journey where I started off with the core accounting practice, and soon I moved into mergers and acquisitions. I spent about 4 years in Ernst& Young as part of the M&A team. Moved to PwC after that. So amongst the big fours, I did three of them. KPMG is the only place where I haven't been. And thereafter, I joined this pharmaceutical startup called Tenshi Kaizen. It's a company that specializes in differentiated products for easily dissolvable tablets that help people for either with throat deficiencies or for pediatric use or for geriatric use. uh, I joined there as the head of business finance and made my way to heading the finance team over there. And thereafter, I joined Log9. So the idea of getting into the whole EV ecosystem is where Log9 really attracted me, and the journey has been great. We have done some really commendable work as far as creating firsts in the ecosystem from a finance perspective at Log9. And also proud to say that my team and I have been able to break a lot of barriers when it comes to all of this. So that's a quick intro about myself.
All right, perfect. Thanks, Vinay. It's been going into three of all the big fours. That's wonderful. And then moving into the startup startup area. That's again a great this thing. And EV. I do have a personal interest in EV myself, and I'm sure a lot of viewers here they might have invested in Log9 and they would have seen Log9 at our platform and have a good knowledge about Log9. But for those who don't, if you could just give a brief intro into what Log9 does, and we could get started onto what the webinar is all about.
Sure. So Log9. Sure. Sure. So let me start off with the genesis of the name Log9, which is the unit of measurement for nanotechnology. Log9 was the first company that was incubated at IIT Roorkee. The founders are all IIT graduates specializing in material sciences, chemical engineering. Um, the whole idea of nanotechnology was to try and make differentiated chemistries as far as batteries is concerned. The company started off with graphene-based research and slowly branched out into batteries and battery applications. It's been a long journey of research and development where there has been a considerable amount of time that has been spent on battery research, cell development, etc. And today, Log9 is taking a different shape, as I would say, from the past couple of years. It's been, an evolving journey, but at the same time, it is also a challenging one. Log9 is also the first company to have the cell manufacturing unit at Bangalore, a 50 megawatt hour facility. And while our core focus on cell research and cell development started off with lithium titanate oxide as a chemistry that we chose, and slowly we are branching into LFP chemistry as well. Uh, Log9 is also uh, branching into an asset management service, which essentially helps manage EV assets across the ecosystem. A very big void as far as the EV ecospace is concerned is a lot of people not understanding the right way of using batteries or to gauge the residual value of batteries, and at the same time trying to understand how the useful life of the battery can be extended. So these are a few things that Log9 is also branching into, and today the PNL is shaping up very well. Yeah, so that's a brief history about Log9. We've raised close to $40 million till date. Marquee investors: Amara Raja, Xfinity, Catamaran, Sequoia, and soon we are also in the cusp of our ensuing fundraise as well. Fingers crossed that should be closed fairly soon.
Right. All right, that's wonderful. That's great. So Vinay, just wanted to before we go into the details of Log9 and how it goes. So primarily it is on the EV segment and the growth of EV. So I just if you could just give us the landscape of how the EV sector is, because when EV came into the picture, it was people were wary about how it's going to fare. But 5 years down the line, EV is a big part of the whole vehicle landscape in India right now, but still a small proportion. But again, there is has made its mark in the market. But there's still doubts on the EV segment itself. So if you could tell us what your opinion is on the EV landscape from here, probably 5, 10 years
Sure.
down the
So
line,
it's
where
been
does
a
EV stand? Overview of EV and a little bit into the specific of lithium ion, because batteries are the core of an electric vehicle. So if you could tell us, that would give us a good picture about this industry.
Sure. So the EV ecosystem has been, developing fairly robustly over the past couple of years. I think there have been very significant changes, constant changes, I would say, and largely government impetus that's been pushing the EV sector. Now, while I can speak more about the commercial vehicle segment, probably not as much as about the personal mobility segment. The PLI scheme that the government announced, and thereafter the FAME, etc., have all been these push towards adopting EVs. While
Mhm.
there is a slight adoption issue as far as range anxiety is concerned, or maybe whether EV really has a trade-off as far as an ICE engine is concerned. Those are doubts that will always be there. But as far as the commercial vehicle segment is concerned, I think it's a no-brainer. Using an electric vehicle definitely helps save costs. Your overall, cost of ownership, etc. The TCO is far lower. Now,
Right.
let me break this down into two parts. One is how the EV ecosystem has evolved from a government perspective, and thereafter how various industries and companies have been sort of adapting to it. Uh, the government did come up with a lot of interesting schemes, and I would have to give a lot of credit to the government for having come across and putting across these incentive programs that helps adoption of EVs much easier. And at the same
Mhm.
time, there have also been a lot of tie-ups from banks to provide the right kind of funding for EV adoption, cheap sources of funding for EV adoption. So these are collectively, very good strides that the government has taken in order to bring about the EV adoption at a faster pace. Now, as far as companies and industries are concerned, I think uh, there are two parts to it. One is where quick copy paste of what's happening in China and sort of force fit into our Indian conditions and use. And there is another part where there is innovation and tweaking requirements based on Indian requirements, which essentially would probably lead to a lot of R&D, and at the same time would lead to innovation, and thereafter creating IP, etc. So these two things, while are very far away from each other, unfortunately the innovation part is something that is not as robust as it should be, and for obvious reasons, because I think it's very difficult to get the right kind of funds for innovation in the country. I think very few R&D companies or innovation companies really get funded, and it's a long journey. So while having said that, I think uh, i- the EV industry is at a very interesting point. Um, it would be interesting to see which chemistry becomes the choice. There is also a lot of innovation happening worldwide on different chemistries, from whether it is a sodium ion chemistry or an LFP chemistry or NMC chemistry. All of these is something that would now shape up, and India would then probably choose the chemistry of choice, and that is something, while a little slow in the previous years, now people are realizing what really works for the country, and I think that is evolving at a fast pace. So I think it's going to be a very interesting couple of years as industries shape up and adapt to
Mhm.
provide the right kind of solutions to consumers as far as electric vehicles are concerned. And particularly in the commercial space, I think the chemistry of choice obviously is LFP, and that is shaping up pretty well.
All right, perfect. So a little bit more on the second part of the question that I'd like to, emphasize on. Since, like I mentioned, EV is nothing without the battery itself, right? So I just wanted to understand where India stands in the battery segment right now, and in terms of production and in terms of assembling. I assume there's a lot of assembling units in India for the lithium-ion batteries and for the EV batteries. So I just want to get a perspective from you. How is the revolution been in the battery segment in India, and what do you see the changes going to come up in the near future?
Right. So I think as far as capacity is concerned, it's a pull market, and therefore um, a lot of players will come into the industry, and there can be capacity that's built over and over again. I think from that perspective, every nook and corner you see a new company that is coming up with battery manufacturing or battery assembly. Two parts to that again. I think one is on the innovation part. The other one, like I mentioned, is a pure import from China and force fit into Indian,
Correct.
force fit into whatever can be offered to the consumers. So from the first part, which is essentially non-innovation, I think there are a lot of players and capacity is being built. The early adoption has been in the L3 passenger segment for three-wheelers, and obviously for two-wheelers. There have been every couple of months there is a new company that is being set up for battery assembly, and from a capacity perspective, I think that just keeps increasing day by day. Now on the innovation side, I think that's where a lot of interesting things are happening. Now when I say innovation, it's not only limited to the battery as such. Innovation also at the cell level, as far as what kind of cells and how the cells need to be put together in the battery, because at the end of the day the cells are the ones
Mhm.
that are really the storage of electricity in the battery component, right? And at the same time there's also a BMS, the electronic infrastructure, etc. So those are things where there is a lot of innovation happening, and it'll be interesting to see who will be at the forefront when it comes to that part of the innovation. While having said that, I think uh, there is going to be very interesting shift towards Indian sort of Indian made or Indian used products, which is essentially BMS or even cells, etc., that is manufactured in India. While that is
Mhm.
something I feel is going to take a couple of years, but I think uh, the overall infrastructure that is being provided by the government is something I feel would probably help in increasing this capacity. So like I said, I think the two fronts, which is the innovation side and the pure assembly, import from China, etc. Uh, those are the ways I think how the industry is shaping up right now. While one is focusing more on high value creation, the other one is on low margin and just scale.
All right, perfect. Thank you for that. Vinay, wanted to get a little deeper into the company right now. So if you could tell me where, so the landscape for EV and the future of EV, seems very bright and is at the cusp of the moment right now. So can you tell me where does Log9 fit in here, and explain a little to our viewers and our investors, what the business model of the company is.
Sure. So, like I said, we started off with choosing a chemistry which is lithium titanate oxide, a very expensive chemistry. The cells are probably twice as expensive as the competition. We started off with that particular chemistry, thinking that what would be required in the Indian ecosystem would be number one, fast charging, and number two, a very long useful life, and a very robust battery, essentially a battery that does not catch fire. So that's how we sort of developed our PNL. We started off using that particular chemistry. And slowly now we're branching into the LFP chemistry. FY22 was our first year where we went commercial from battery sales. We focused only on the commercial segment, and there's a reason why we focus on the commercial segment. It's because we feel that real impact from a climate perspective is done only when you utilize the electric vehicle at least 90%. So utilization of the EV is actually very, very critical for the carbon offset. Otherwise, really, using an electric vehicle running just 10, 20 kilometers every day really does not have any impact on the climate. So that's a conscious decision that we took um, to focus only on the commercial vehicle segment. Started off with three-wheelers, had a fantastic tie-up with a new age OEM called Omega Seiki. Interesting to note that while we partnered with Omega Seiki was number 8, number 9 from a three-wheeler manufacturer perspective, and over the years, through continued support both from our side and from their side, Omega Seiki actually is now the top 3 manufacturers of electric three-wheelers in the L5 category. So that's been a very interesting journey where we've been able to scale, uh, obviously at the backdrop of equity fundraise from our investors, Petronas and Amara Raja, and at the same time Catamaran have been very supportive from that front. And at the same time, we also leveraged our position by raising debt. Also proud to say that we are the first EV company to have a public sector unit bank on our balance sheet. Bank of Maharashtra, Exim, and SIDBI, 3 marquee banks in our balance sheet. Um, so through these efforts, we started scaling our P&L, hit 110 crore top line last financial year, and slowly we are now branching into, while mobility has been a focus for us from the beginning. When I say mobility, I mean two-wheelers, three-wheelers, and four-wheelers. And now we're slowly shifting the P&L to focus on stationary storage and battery energy storage, which is essentially non-mobile applications, UPS or huge storage areas where um, essentially it would be replacing your diesel generators. So that's where we are at right now. A very interesting point, because developing a new PNL which is non-mobility is not what all EV companies do currently, and that's something that is quite interesting for us. Also proud to announce that we just closed a partnership with Godrej, where we would be providing batteries for their forklifts. That's also a very important deal for us. I mean, Godrej is the second largest forklift manufacturer in the country today. So, like I said, I think the FY25 for us is going to be a very interesting year, where while mobility would be our major P&L driver, incremental growth and scale would come from these new segments.
All right, that's wonderful, and congratulations on the new partnership. Well, Vinay, I wanted to understand. So you mentioned mobility. From the start, mobility has been one of the more, revenue generation method for you. So the non-mobility side, like you mentioned, for let's say UPS or replacing generators, is it already in place, or is it something in the pipeline to come in the near future?
Are you talking from a Log9 perspective or from an industry
Yes,
perspective?
from a Log9 perspective.
So that is something that's already active. We have started sales at the for the stationary storage PNL. Um, while those sales have not been significant in the previous year, very, very small amounts. This year is where we'll be scaling it.
Mhm.
Um, Unlike the mobility segment, where typically the industry loves to go down the route of leasing, over here it'll be outright sales, and obviously far more comfortable position for me from a cash management perspective. So the product development phase, etc., is already been done. We've got our certifications. We've already have had the test runs with the consumers, with our customers, and we're at that stage where incremental orders would be flowing in, and uh, the sort of mix between the mobility and the stationary storage would probably end in FY25 at 60/40.
If you could, you mentioned on the top line of the company in the last financial year. If you could just walk us through how the company has been growing in terms of revenue over the past probably couple of years, and what is the target in FY25, and in terms of profitability, how the company is planning on achieving break even level, EBITDA positive level, and things of that sort. If you could just walk us down that road.
Yeah, so profitability, I think, in the EV industry, a very dangerous question. I think, few and far between profitable EV companies. But let me talk about our P&L. So, like I said, we started off in FY22. Every year we've grown 3x, right? So this year, FY24, we closed at 110 crores. Uh, while profitability is going to be a function of margin expansion, which is essentially higher capacity utilization, there really isn't too much operating leverage
Okay.
in this industry because we're very thin margins and also very price sensitive, which is why developing a new P&L such as stationary storage makes sense. Um, the pricing pressure, especially with the um, new scheme that has been announced by the government. Year one would be X amount of subsidy. Year two will be a 50% reduction in the subsidy. Things like this obviously would put a lot of pressure on the margins, right? And from an overall sales perspective, while that would give impetus to sales, unfortunately, from a profitability perspective, it takes a beating. So, from our perspective, FY25, we're targeting to hit a 300 crore top line, and like I mentioned, it would be a mix of both stationary storage and mobility. Um, while the profitability of these two P&Ls are fairly different, and I would also like to uh, include the concept of leasing versus outright sale, because there's a lot of imputed finance cost that gets added on when with mobility sales, where the industry just works on leasing, and I don't get to do outright sales. So there's a lot of imputed cost that sits over there as well. But that being said, we are quite poised to hit profitability in FY26. This will largely be through innovations as far as using better materials are concerned. We would be also developing more automated solutions as far as a manufacturing process is concerned, and at the same time making um, a lean team where I think, like I said, the automation brings in a lot of reduces a lot of redundancy as far as manpower is also concerned. I think that's basically going to be our strategy. And like I said, it's a price sensitive market, so developing additional P&Ls is what's going to drive our profitability.
Okay. Adding to that, Vinay, so you mentioned that the margins, the margins would increase for you only when you go at capacity. And right now, there's not a lot of players in the cell manufacturing, in that sector. So, and since Log9 has already started with the 50 megawatt, how that will play a role in the future profitability of the company. And like you mentioned, funding is in process, and that's something coming up in the near future, like you guys have planned. So, what is that funding going to plan on that front? Just wanted to get some more clarity on that.
Sure. So let me start, and maybe let me clarify that point on profitability. So when I meant margin expansion, what I meant is as you increase your capacity, with incremental sales, it's basically your recovery of your fixed costs. That's what I meant by capacity utilization. So the more I utilize my capacity, basically drive more sales, establish operating leverage for my P&L, and that sort of flows down to EBITDA. So that's essentially what I meant. From a cell
Correct.
manufacturing perspective, I think cell manufacturing is a beast by itself. It requires a very high level of investment, and it's a kind of manufacturing that requires significant scale for it to make sense from a overall profitability perspective or from a business perspective. And when I say scale, that is uh, at least 5 to 10 gigawatts. So that's something that requires close to 200 to 300 million dollars, and we have taken a call not to go down that route. Uh, while the overall, import from China, I think, is something that will continue to happen, and uh, while it is better to accept the fact that China's far ahead of us and has immense capacity as far as production is concerned of cells. Um, it is the overall change in profitability would largely come from asset management services, and that's where Log9 has floated the subsidiary, which is Log9 Mobility, where we manage EV assets across two-wheelers, three-wheelers, and four-wheelers. Building this ecosystem sort of helps push sales, number one, and at the same time helps improve your price points, and at the same time helps with an additional P&L in terms of leasing that sort of helps you with your cash flows. So these are the three things I think would develop into overall uh, profitability for companies in the EV segment. And like I mentioned earlier, often overlooked is the asset management services, which is essentially trying to study the battery and the way it functions in an electric vehicle, and try and get ways to ensure that the battery gives you the best maximum output, and at the same time ensures that it has the highest useful life. So I think that is an interesting space, and that is what I think as a company we would also want to develop.
Hi everyone. Sorry, there was some network error that we had. I think we have Vinay back.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, man, I think we can carry on.
Sure. So no, I just sort of concluded what I
Uh,
was saying.
Vinay, can you? I think we lost you in the middle. If you could just,
Sure, sure. Am I audible?
yeah, Vinay, carry on.
Sure. So
Yeah,
I
we
don't
can
know
hear you.
where you lost me, but what I was talking about was the importance of asset management services in the EV ecosystem. Essentially, trying to understand how batteries operate and sort of improving the battery's life through through various analysis and data points. So what we do in the asset management services, that we gather a lot of data. These data points obviously are privy and an IP that we're developing. What this essentially does is helps us understand how the battery operates in various conditions, and that essentially then allows the customer to get the best output out of the battery, and also at the same time helps with the residual value of the battery as well. So that I think is going to be a very interesting and very important piece in the overall EV ecosystem that will definitely help push sales and at the same time contribute to profitability.
All right, perfect. Vinay, just wanted to talk a little bit more on, what the different advancements in this field are. So one is lithium ion, and there's, like you mentioned, there's different chemistries that you are looking into it. Can you tell me what are the other available options? So there are different options which are available, but at the current moment, it's not available in India. There's technologies by by Chinese by it, which are quite big and quite advanced in in this field. Just wanted to understand in India, what are the current available options and what does the future look like in this field in the advancement sector?
No, so I think from an innovation standpoint, it's a very difficult question to answer. I think sodium ion is something that is coming up. There are several other chemistries that are coming up. So how that evolves is something that time will tell. But from an India perspective, I think lithium ferrous phosphate, which is LFP, is a chemistry that is pretty much become a standard. There's obviously NMC as well, which is nickel, manganese, and cobalt. um, Also a chemistry that is used for slightly smaller applications like bikes, etc. These are pretty much the two prevalent chemistries in the country right now. But like I said, I think these are chemistries which have not really been developed in India, or or even tweaked for that matter in the country. I think these are pretty much chemistries that has been borrowed from China. So my point is there again, the innovation capital or the innovation as far as from India is concerned, I think that is something um, quite unlikely at this point in time. But that being said, future as far as sodium ion or any other chemistry is concerned, very difficult question to answer.
All right. Vinay, another thing, before we close, just wanted to understand, there are a few challenges in this segment, right? With the scalability in place. So, like, I have a couple of questions myself, but you could also, carry on to that and, post some more challenges that is there. One big challenge that, I've always thought about is the network of infrastructure built in the country. So since we are looking at EV to be, if not at level at with ICE vehicles, definitely at probably a 30% or 40% market share in probably like 2030 35 around that time. So, but the network of infrastructure has not been built yet. So that is one of the big challenges that we have. I just wanted to understand what your views are on that.
I think the infrastructure is, while not at a fast pace earlier, but I think it is catching up. There are several companies that are putting up the charging infra networks, and I think there has been a quite a significant amount of funding in that space as well. So I wouldn't say that the infrastructure is something that is slow or not keeping pace with the EV adoption. I think there are efforts both from the government standpoint and from private players to bring up the charging infra. However, the protocols of the charging infrastructure is something that is what I think needs to be decided and sort of uh, made at even keel with all EV operators. I think having a different charging protocol across EVs would not really help the EV adoption. I think there has to be a uniform charging protocol. So that being said, I think uh, as far as the metro cities is concerned, I think charging infra is developing fairly quickly, and tier two cities also seeing a lot of traction over there. So I think uh, from a commercial vehicle segment, charging infrastructure, is something that is developed across networks, because commercial vehicles typically follow the same route over and over again. So therefore, for those applications, I think charging infra is a completely different beast. But from a personal mobility segment, I think that is a road that is going to take quite some time to develop.
All right. Understood. Understood. And can you tell me like what other challenges, this segment faces that, that requires probably like government intervention, to scale up in the EV segment?
I think profitability pretty much is the key, and the proof in the pudding is when there are significant cash flows and positive cash flows. I think when that is not there, really, I think there's no business. So I think the challenge is going to be a significant amount of capital that will be required over the next couple of years until companies are able to get to that capacity where costs get absorbed, and at the same time, there has to be incentives from reduction costs concerned, or from custom duty incentives concerned. I think the government has to put um, these measures, and that's something that will continue over a period of time. With that being said, I think while scale is one thing, uh, companies will have to look for more automated solutions in order to bring about that change in a P&L, which obviously
Mhm.
brings you to a bit positive situation. I think that is going to be a challenging couple of years, and pretty much the companies that will sort of look into these aspects are the ones that are going to come out winning.
All right, perfect. Vinay, I just have one question. So you mentioned about mobility in the commercial segment, and you told us about how Log9 is making batteries for the three wheelers. Just wanted to understand. So right now, with a lot of quick commerce into the place, and quick commerce and food deliveries, growing at a rapid scale in tier one and tier two cities as well. So wanted to understand, is Log9 also servicing to the two-wheeler segment as well? Because four-wheelers, I'm sure it's going to be a little while, to get into the commercial sector. But two-wheelers and three-wheelers are a big chunk of the vehicles that are out there. And since you're already servicing three-wheelers, wanted to understand how Log9's plans
No,
are
so
if they
we
are
do.
going to service those.
No, so we do two-wheelers as well. I think uh, our two-wheeler PNL actually is the fastest growing PNL currently. So we have been
Right.
doing two-wheelers for quite some time with our partnership with Quantum, a Hyderabad-based OEM.
Okay.
So that is something that we're already in with, and we're also exploring new partnerships with certain other OEMs in the two-wheeler space. So two-wheelers are fairly important PNL for us, and I think a very fast-growing PNL for us.
All right. So just one final question before we can close up and go to the questions that's coming up from the investors and the viewers. Definitely there is a requirement or involvement of the government in this space.
Sorry, I'm losing you.
Hey Vinay, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Perfect. Yes, like I was,
No, so I lost you
my
completely
question
there.
was basically, so definitely there is a need for government intervention to come into, for the EVs, Okay, yeah. So, like, government intervention needed to scale up the EV sector. So, just wanted to infrastructure network, which I was telling earlier. Like you mentioned, it in tier one cities, it's quite good. But in tier two and tier three, is it going to be building that infrastructure in that segment, or is it going to be on the innovation which you told India is not at par at what it should be? So, just wanted to get your view on that.
No, so I'm not sure if I followed that question really well, but let me try and answer it nonetheless. I think from a tier two city perspective, charging infra, it's like I said, a uniform protocol that would sort of solve for quick EV adoption. I think that is what really drives more EV adoption. And as far as innovation is concerned, like I said. we're not really an economy that sort of helps companies that are in innovation with the adequate amount of capital. Very difficult to raise innovation capital, so to speak. Log9 as well. I mean, we've been in R&D for many years, and very difficult for us also to raise capital from an when we are just focusing on R&D. So I think innovation per se is something that probably is not going to be the driver over here, and largely the existing chemistries would sort of continue to sort of pave the way for the EV adoption.
I would just like to, close this by just asking you a question. I wanted to understand how your journey with TAP has been, because I think we've been working for over a year now. So I just wanted to, understand how your journey with TAP has been and how TAP has been, a good source of, your cash flow financing for you.
No, absolutely. I think really treasure the relationship with TAP. I still remember, first when we reached out, we started off with a very small exposure. I think overall it's been a great journey over the last 1 year. I think exposure has increased, although I'd like the exposure to increase a little bit more. But that being said, I think it's been a great experience. The what I would the one thing that I would want to give you guys a kudos for is the speed with which you guys raise capital. I think that is absolutely stunning, and that's something that you guys should keep going.
Absolutely. Thanks, Vinay. I think right now we'll just keep the floor open for if there's any questions from the investor. I think there were two questions earlier, but there was some network error through me, so my I couldn't see the chat. If you could open that and you could tell the question, probably
Sure.
we'll
So
take it forward from there.
talking about innovation, I think we've had several technical challenges on this call, but all right. So Sachin, is there any utility scale project Log9 is doing? I'm sorry, I didn't quite follow this. Sachin, if you'd want to elaborate on that.
I think he can message it out in the meantime. I think there was another one question which was there that you could pick up probably in the meantime. Sachin could
Is
ask
it
us.
costly to have an innovation area in case of sodium I think innovation by itself is a fairly costly affair, whether it's sodium chemistry or otherwise. I think most chemistries will take a long time to achieve supply chain efficiencies. I think where lithium was many, many years back, due to increased scale, is where it has made sense from a price perspective. I think similar things will happen with various other chemistries also. So it's going to take quite some time, and it's going to be a fairly long journey until scale reaches a point where supply chain gets efficient. So I think overall, I think innovation anyway is going to be an expensive affair. Moving on to
I think Sachin has clarified on that. Uh, I wanted to know if there are a
okay,
tender
yeah.
for
So
best.
yes,
Yeah.
so there are a lot of tenders, yes, for BESS, and we are actively pursuing a lot of these opportunities. Currently, we are working on, while I can't share that right now, but we are working on a couple of projects in the BESS space. And like I said, that's going to be a focus area for us in this financial year. And like I mentioned, shift of P&L and profitability is going to be driven by that.
All right. Perfect. I
Are
think
we
Ankit
into
Joshi
sort
has asked if Ankit Joshi has asked, like, is there asset leasing program of Log9 with TAP? I think we can definitely explore that if that's something, Log9 is open for and is looking for that kind of, since you are also in the mobility and you are also building your own asset book as well. So this is something we can definitely look at. And if that's something, viable for both of us, we can definitely look into that. But your thoughts,
No,
Vinay?
absolutely. No, no, absolutely. I mean, today we are at 4,000 vehicles in our mobility platform, a lease book of 110 crores and growing. Um, fairly robust revenue streams and very good collections, and good profitability as well. I think we're already nearing EBITDA positive in that business. So, from a leasing program perspective, like I said, we layer in a portion of asset management services into the lease, and that's where our differentiator is, and that's where we're able to command a slight premium as far as the lease is concerned in the market. So definitely a very important P&L for us, and it's going to be a focus. So happy to join hands with TAP for the leasing program as well.
Sure, absolutely. We'll discuss on that more, Vinay. I think there's a question by Pulkit to you, Vinay. So he's just
Are
asking, is
we,
it
are we into a solid state? If yes, seeing production. This is as much of science I know. Being a chartered accountant, I wouldn't know too much about solid state, etc. So I'll have to apologize. I apologize, Pulkit, but I can definitely get back to you. I could check with my team and get back to you on that. Uh, Automation initiatives by Log9. So from a production line perspective, we have set up a semi-automated production line. From a pure cell chemistry perspective, there are many algorithms that we have come up with that helps understand cells better, and that sort of also ensures that the battery also functions the right way. So those are automations that we are working on, and something that we are also developing uh, as and when more and more data is being presented to us, the automation levels also improve. So that is something that we're doing. And finally, Sachin, any plan for IPO soon? Definitely in the pipeline, maybe in the next couple of years. Uh, we would definitely want to do that once we're profitable. So unlike some of the others, so definitely in the pipeline.
that's great to know, Vinay. I
And
think there's
how
a
is
follow-up question by Pulkit here. So he just wanted to understand how we are, going up against the competition like Exide, Amar Raja, and Gojin.
so while I mentioned at the outset, right, the only differentiator over here would be the layer of asset management that we provide. That's essentially understanding batteries very well and trying to provide those inputs in the EV ecosystem to fleet operators for them to get the best out of their vehicles and their battery. That I think is going to be a major differentiator when we compare it to other players such as Amara Raja, Bhushan, or Excite. I think that's where we have a competitive advantage, and the numbers speak for itself.
Perfect. Perfect. All right,
I think
Vinay,
that's
if there's any other question that comes up, we can address that. But in the meantime, thank you. Thank you for taking the time, for joining us in this webinar. We have a lot of investors. So thank you for taking the time to, give us your opinion about the company and the industry. And thank you everyone for joining us in this webinar. Perfect. I think there's not much questions. If you would like to say something, Vinay, then we can probably close it up.
thank you so much for the opportunity to share my thoughts on the EV ecosystem. But looking forward to further collaborations with TAP.
All right, perfect. Thank you, Vinay, and thank you
Great.
everyone for joining us this webinar for
Thank you, everyone, and happy weekend.
on Log9. I think there's a follow-up question by Pulkit here. If you could, if you could take your
No, no, absolutely. I think uh, uh, you know supply chain and choice of cell manufacturers always going to be a driver as far as our our share in the market is concerned. I think from our perspective, locking in prices and having long-term arrangements with vendors is what pretty much drives our security as far as market share is concerned. But that being said, I think we are catering to a completely different segment. And while I doubt if there's going to be any overlap over there, um, the overall JV that you mentioned doesn't really affect us.
all right. Okay, perfect. Thanks, Vinay. Once again, thank you for taking the time to join us, and
Pleasure.
thank you everyone